Welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast. I am Kristen Boyce, a licensed marriage and family therapist with a private practice, Pathways to Healing Counseling. Through conversations, education, strategies, and shared stories, we will be closing the chapter on all the thoughts, feelings, people, and circumstances that don't serve you anymore and open the door to possibilities and the real you. You won't want to miss an episode, so be sure to subscribe. Welcome to this week's Close the Chapter podcast. I am so excited about the guest today. If you have struggled with anxiety or depression, we mainly focused on anxiety, then this is the episode for you. He gave so many good deep dive metaphors into anxiety and depression in the healing journey. He also shared 3 process steps on healing anxiety and what that looks like. He talks about brutal honesty, slowing down, and getting the facts. And we break that down in this episode. We talk about the roots of anxiety and how to heal it ultimately, because that's what we want. We want to get unstuck from the feeling of being out of control, the anxious feeling in our nervous system and our bodies, and we want to free ourselves ultimately. And that's why this episode is so important. Share it with a friend, share it with your partner, share it with your coworker, whoever is struggling with anxiety or depression, but specifically anxiety. This is such a helpful episode. So let me tell you about my guest. Faust Ruggiero is a psychologist who has been in private practice for over 35 years. He's got so much experience, and that's why this episode is so important and helpful. Before entering private practice, he worked in clinics for deaf children, prisons, nursing homes, substance abuse centers, inpatient facilities, and is a consultant for major national and international corporations. He is a published research author and professional clinical trainer. In the summer of 2016, he began to develop the Fix Yourself Empowerment series based on the Process Life program to help readers address difficult situations in their lives. The series currently includes the Fix Yourself Handbook, the Fix Your Anxiety Handbook, the Fix Your Depression Handbook, and the Fix Your Anger Handbook. He's also working on an addictions, Fix Your Addiction Handbook as we speak. He's filled with practical tools and strategies, and he normalizes what the healing process looks like. And that is so important to not feel alone in this, because oftentimes the shame of what we might be thinking, some of our choices and some of our behavior, but feeling stuck and powerless, we need support. And this is one of those episodes that you can listen to multiple times. You'll also want to grab the journal. When you get the journal, it can help you along in the processing of what's going on in your life. You can get that for free at Kristen, Kristen, Boyce, BOICE.com/free resources. And without further ado, here is this powerful interview with Faust. Enjoy. Welcome to this week's Close the Chapter podcast. If you're struggling with anxiety, depression, and you feel lost and you're not sure where to go, I have the show for you with my amazing guest, Faust. Faust, welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast.
Kristen, it is a pleasure to be with you today. Thanks for asking me.
I am so glad you're here because there's so many people right now that feel stuck. They feel stuck in like anxious cycles, ruminating thoughts, hyperfixation, like feeling shame, and they can't get out of it, and feeling so anxious and lots of depression right now. So tell me about the Fix Yourself series. How did it start? Tell me a little bit about your career so people can get to know you better.
I've been doing this for about 4 decades now. I'm that guy that was this was going to be me, just the way it is. About 7 years ago, I decided, well, I've been doing this for so long. I went part-time with the counseling and started writing, and we did the Fix Yourself Handbook. It was one of those books that publishers looked at and said, I don't know, this has so many topics in it. It's got 36 different topics for people to work with. And it doesn't have a target audience, which I did not want. I wanted it to be a book for everyone. So we wrote the book. It did very well. I keep my chapters short, 6, 7, 8 pages. And then I give everyone action steps at the end of every chapter. So it went real well. The pandemic hit. And here came the anxiety. So the next book was the Fix Your Anxiety Handbook. Same design as the first. And again, that did well. The logical step, of course, was depression after that one. The Fix Yourself Depression book, the Fix Yourself Depression book came out in December of last year, and we're just getting ready to publish the Fix Your Anger Handbook. That should be out in June with the Addiction Handbook to follow. So the series is now beginning to snowball, and we're getting some real good responses from people. It's an actionable book, that's why. Here's the problem. Here's the information. Do this.
That helps because people need practical steps. I find when people are anxious, let's kind of start there. Let's start with anxiety because it's the one I'm seeing the most prevalent of. I see a lot of depression too, but anxiety seems to be the front runner. And they just don't know how to get out of the intrusive thoughts, the body sensation of fear, the what ifs. So let's break down, where does someone begin to kind of self-soothe and work through what they feel like is something they're going to be stuck in forever?
You said the words, that whole body thing. Every time we deal with something that falls on the mental health spectrum, if you will, we go to brain first. I got to calm this down. I've always said to people, if you think about it, if your body calms, if you can get your body to calm, what you're anxious about may still be there, but all of a sudden you have this calm approach and your head now can say, okay, I can start looking at things. The first thing I get people to do when we start working with the body, a lot of it to begin with is a purging thing. I'll look and say, let's look at what you're doing. Get your bad habits out of the picture. Like if you have anxiety, why would you have 4 cups of coffee a day and then an energy drink and sugar? And why would you do that? You know you have anxiety. That's only going to exacerbate the situation. So we pull those things out, toxic relationships, all those kind of things that get the body so wrapped up, so tight. We want to get the body down first. So I always start there.
Okay, so someone says, my body, I'm having heart palpitations. Let's say someone has a fear of traveling. They know they're going to travel, their heart palpitations, their body saying, do not do it. Do not get on the plane. Do not leave your house. Where does someone begin to soothe the body?
You're really right to the point that we get anxiety and we look at it in that anxious situation. Okay, now, next week I'm going to fly. Well, you've been anxious all this time and you're expecting yourself in a week to somehow deal with this so you can get on a plane. And outside, sticking Xanax or whatever you want to put in your body, you're not going to do it. The key is to learn how to live differently. So when these situations arise, you're primed and ready to go. It's about reducing that anxiety every day. That's what people don't do. There's a kind of a surrender with anxiety. It's not what I have, it's who I am. And we let the little internal bully beat us up every day. And it's not who you are. It's what I keep telling people. It's what you have. And anything you have is beatable.
So where do they start? Like if you say it's how you live every day. What are some things people could do every day?
You start by clearing out all the stuff we talked about, what you're putting in your body, the schedule that you put yourself on. People get up and they rush from place to place to place. The internal language is horrible. I hate this. I don't want to go there. The resistance factor, the difficulty transitioning because of all of it. So I'm going to start with that body. I'm going to then go to internal language and how you talk to yourself. I'm going to talk about schedules. Try to get up the same time every day. Get enough sleep, because the correlation between lack of sleep and anxiety or depression is huge. So we want to get sleep in there. And then we're going to look at the situations in life. Are you in a horrible relationship? Did you just get out of one? Are you in financial distress? All those things. Then we're going to go to all those things. People tend to go to those things first. Well, if I get this, that's great, but you're still doing all those other things. And you're still talking to yourself like you're the bully. You're beating yourself up. Let's change all that around so we get some positive energy going.
Okay, so let's talk about roots of anxiety. When we look at family of origin, how important is it to explore trauma from your past, family of origin, when you're looking at anxiety and depression? Let's talk about that for a bit.
Those are huge. When I begin to counsel people, we take that first session and we want to get a rapport going. I want them to feel comfortable and we get some basic information. My second session is always that historical thing. Let's go deep. Let's go find out what were mom and dad like. Do we have suicides in the family and drug addiction or all those kinds of things? Who's on medication and for what? And there's other physical things you got to look at. Do we have thyroid or hormonal issues? Those are huge when it comes to depression and anxiety. And particularly for women, those hormonal things, we're really now beginning, finally people are coming on board. I've been saying this for 30 years. When you have those types of hormonal things changing all the time, I think anxiety and depression aren't going to come in. When we get into that, women will say, yeah, I've been getting real anxious. Then I get real sad after it passes. Yeah. So it's educating people with all this stuff, all this family history. It's huge. And then we talk about that. That's the genetic stuff. Then it's the environmental stuff. Were they abusive? Did they drink? And a lot of verbal things going on. Were you traumatized? If so, how? Now we're going to get all that information. So the point is, I'm going to put together this big picture of who they are. And most of the time, they haven't gone there. Or they have all the little pieces, but they haven't put them into a cohesive framework so they can begin working with it.
Because it feels like on some cases that I've worked on recently, that abandonment is highly correlated with anxiety. I find that, where is it? Let's explore. Was there a divorce? Was there a parent that died? Was there a parent that left? Was there a parent that had an affair and wasn't present? And therefore you felt like that parent was gone. Maybe they were a workaholic. Maybe they were a single parent home. There's a lot there that the client feels like all of a sudden they have like these panic attacks and they don't understand where they're coming from. Do you find that where you kind of look at abandonment or some grief or break in the family system?
Always. And when I see abandonment issues, I always look for the rejection issues too, because those go hand in hand. It's not just like, gee, I'm the kid and mom and dad are going to get divorced or one passes or whatever. Then there's that part where they're so taken with what they're doing that when I go and I say, hey, mom or dad, they say, I can't do this right now. And I feel cast aside. There's a rejection thing going on. So I look at all those things because people will say, well, yeah, it's from that time. The problem is that's only the catalyst, if you will. That's where it started. Now you keep on repeating the cycle. That's the problem. And the brain adjusts to that. Our brain adjusts to whatever we're doing with it. So now that's me. And people, they abandon me and they reject me and no one thinks I'm that important. I'm invalidated every day. So I do all this to myself so I can deal with it every day. And now that whole life-fulfilling prophecy becomes a depressed, angry, anxious way to live, but I know how to do it. So I'll stay there because every day that my expectations aren't high. I don't feel the abandonment or rejection and that loss. So I keep it where it is. Once we get through all the physical stuff and the family stuff, then I'm going there because it's important for them to see this happened way back there. But do you see yourself still doing it?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay. So let's talk if we've got abandonment and rejection and people kind of keeping themselves on this hamster wheel, if you will, like busyness so that I don't have to feel. And then when things kind of slow down or things shift or change or there's a transition, I find that's where that trigger of rejection, abandonment, and the fear. And then they might be overcompensating with their kids, right? I didn't get that, so I'm going to swing the pendulum and give them everything, but their anxiety is still there.
Sure it is. It never leaves. And you're right, there's that triggering episode. Something happens, someone dies, you lose the job, whatever it may be. And then it all comes to the surface. And then we get all these different behaviors to try to deal with it. And I always tell them, that's a blessing. You look at it as horror. I look at it as a blessing because now you're not stuck in that toxic comfort zone you built and lived your life in. This just, you imploded for a little while, but that was the thing that said, okay, I need help. And then you're more inclined to say, okay, help me out here because I can't do this on my own.
Yes, the breakthrough is you're breaking open to free yourself from getting unstuck is kind of what I hear you saying.
Exactly.
That's the catalyst for you to finally break the cycle and heal that because it has been repressed and suppressed for so long.
And I tell them it was a toxic life, but there's a part of you in there in your brain that says, I don't want this. So now when that little trigger, that little episode happens, it's like your brain comes forward and says, good, let's get all this stuff. And then it just opens up. Defenses go down. There's a surrender. And that's when people will say, okay, help me. And the key then is not to rush them into a quick solution. It's to keep uncovering, because if you rush them, they'll say, okay, fine, we fixed it, and they're gone. And you know what's going to happen then. So the key then is to say, okay, this is the starting block. I'm not giving you a solution in a month. You need to know that. This happened for a reason. If you were strong on the inside, if you didn't have all that trauma and those things you were dealing with, you wouldn't have had this level of a reaction. So in that you did, let's take it nice and slow. I'll get you there. Let's do this a little bit at a time. Most of the time, almost all the time, they'll settle with that, as long as you can show them the light at the end of the tunnel. But if you give it to them too fast, they think they got it. And what they want is a quick solution. Who wouldn't?
That's so important what you're saying. I really want to kind of hone in on this, because people that are anxious or depressed want relief. They don't want to feel like this. So they want a quick solution, like I call it drive-through therapy, where like, just give me the med or whatever it is. And sometimes that's necessary. I'm not saying that, but then we want it fixed. And so we have to tolerate, as therapists and the client and whoever's listening in the audience, like, okay, this isn't going to be a quick fix solution. Even you have the Fix It series, it doesn't mean it's going to be healed overnight, because we're unpacking all these years of suppressed, really unprocessed emotions, body sensations, right? That's what you're saying. It's going to take time.
Exactly what I'm saying. And I tell them that is the gift. If you look at this, first of all, stop looking like this as it's a horrible thing and it's a chore. Now you got to do all this work. You have to make a decision as to how valuable you are to yourself. Am I willing to do this and make it an everyday component in my life? And I'll say to them, if you think that here I am, the guy sitting across the desk from you, and I've had this wonderful life where everything just came in and wow, now I'm giving you the information. If that were the case, I would say run from me as fast as you can, because I wouldn't connect with what you're doing. So I've been through this. I understand that I've got to go slow and I've got to take it one little pebble at a time, not throw the rocks out off the cliff. It's the little pebbles that I have to work with. But when I start doing it, it's not about how much progress. It's me liking the process of doing it, because that's self-care every single day. It doesn't get better than that.
It's embracing the process.
Yes.
Embodying the process.
That's why the first book was called The Process Journey. That's what it's all about. There's no destination. I plead with them, don't even go, I'm going to get to this point and feel better, because you're not getting there. And if you do, when you get there, it won't look the same as it did, because now you're seeing it as chaotic in your mind. I want to get there. It'll be my wonderland. I'll be fine. But when you start getting healthier, you don't need that destination you think you need it. Everything changes. It's about what you're doing in the moment you're breathing it.
Okay, so let's take the example of someone fearful of traveling and getting on a plane, because this is a common one. And they want to go on a trip with their partner, and they really don't want to let the partner down. And I'm trying to think of like a way to frame this that makes sense. So we're tying this thread through so people can really kind of comprehend this. But they think, my goal is to get on the plane. My goal is to get on the plane next week so I can fly with my partner. Like, that's what they think. They're coming into therapy so they can get on the plane and they can be okay on the plane. So how would you walk through someone that says, that's my goal, I want to get on this plane next week?
Okay, so first thing I'm going to say is we have 5 days, 7 days, whatever, to do this. So if you think you're going to come here for an hour and I'm going to give you something, I can give you some things to do. But first of all, you're going to get here probably 5 days in a row. That's the first thing. Then we're going to remove the crazy stuff quickly. But if you're taking a lot and drinking a lot of caffeine, you're going to try to cut that down as much as possible. I'm going to give them breathing exercises to do. Absolutely. And start calming that body down. I'm going to give them internal language to use. Okay, when this happens, I'm going to do this. I'm going to have a calming, supportive internal language along with breathing exercises. If they do things like meditation and yoga, that's great. We'll put those kind of things in there too. When the time comes, I will tell them you might want to think about, for the trip to and from, you can get something to calm you down prescribed twice, because what we're doing now is getting you through this. But the bigger story is, if this is happening, there's a reason. So I'm going to ask you for a commitment to come back. We can get this short-term thing done, but there's a reason why it's happening. And if there's a reason why, do you want to get to the cause, or do you want to keep doing some type of medication or self-medication to make it happen? So let's get to the cause. Try to help them with the quick fix, but there's a reason why it happened. For some people, it's only that. My life is wonderful, but it's only this thing I'm afraid of. I'm afraid of heights, or I'm afraid of insects, or whatever. I said, well, do you want to be afraid of that all your life? You want to come back here every time you're going to fly? Are you going to avoid flying? Or do you want to get to the cause? Because I'll tell you what's going to happen. When we get to the cause of this one thing that you are afraid of, you're going to find out that there are a whole bunch of other things in there. But this is where it manifests. This is where it all comes to a bottleneck, if you will. So there are going to be a whole lot of other things, because you are probably either traumatized to the point that something happened when you, in regard to flying, or you are dealing with other fears and they're coming into them. So we want to go and find out what those are.
Yeah, get to the root cause. I find people with a lot of anxiety in particular feel like they need control, and things that they can't control or feel out of control start sending panic waves through the body. Let's talk about that, this idea of wanting control.
That's the way the human brain works. It doesn't have to control things, but it does not like to feel out of control. So we're quick fix artists. We go get it. We see it. We go get it. So if something's going to make us feel real good right now, then I go get that. Sometimes that might be help from someone, or you go to the doctor, or it could be the other things we do. We eat a lot, or we drink a lot, or we shop, or we do whatever we do. But we do something to medicate the issue. You're back to the causes. What are the causes of it? Otherwise, you're going to medicate all your life. You're going to remain unhealthy. You're going to make poor decisions, or at least decisions that are not in your best interest. And so let's get to the cause of it. It's interesting. Once they do that with me, they like that process. I just found what caused this thing. I said, now we'll backtrack and look at all the steps you took to get there, because that's what's important. There's your process. And when they learn that, that's what makes the difference.
I agree. I think when you have that information, that self-awareness, like, oh, there's not something wrong with me. I'm not defective. I'm not a bad person. That shame of feeling out of control and feeling stuck can really take people down the rabbit hole.
It does. And when I work with them, and it's actually what I do in the first 4 or 5 chapters of the book, I say, these are the things I need from you to get us started. First, I need what I call brutal honesty. If you're going to sugarcoat this thing for me, or for yourself, so you don't feel some of the pain, that's going to be a problem. You're going to be honest. I always talk about it as peeling the layers off the onion. To get the paper off first, that's easy. A couple of layers are doing okay. Now we get deeper and the eyes start to burn. And I said, when you get to the point where you're a little uncomfortable, now you're getting honest. If you don't feel that, it's questionable. I want them to slow down. That's the next step. I think about this. You're running around the room and I'm telling you something you should do. Are you getting the message? Probably not. But if you sit down, face me, and we make eye contact, you got it. So I want them to do that. I want them to begin using their head. If they're getting honest and they are slowing the process down, fact-finding gets a whole lot easier. So now we process I call I over E, intellect over emotion. I say, you're going to emote on things, but I want you to emote on unhealthy things. Let's get the facts in any situation you're going. So I teach them how to be fact finders. And when we put all that together, then we start putting a plan together. So now we're going to present it. You're going to teach you to understand it and then fix it. That really is our process. And that's how we're doing it. You give me the honesty, you present the picture honestly, and I'll help you get there. Then we're going to go get all the facts and all the information for it. Then we're going to put together a plan. And that's what I do. When I write, that's what I do. I present something for them. I give them 6, 7 pages of information. Then I give them the plan. Do this now. And it works. It works in everything we do. It's a program for living. That's all it is.
Yeah, I like that. And I like your analogy with the onions. When you get uncomfortable, you're being honest. Because I think people have so much shame around maybe a choice, behavior, maybe even their thoughts. And so to be brutally honest, I feel like that is one of the biggest journeys for people in the healing process.
It really is. The human brain is one that I always work with the concept of habit formation. I even talk about it a lot in the books, where the brain adjusts to the dysfunction we're introducing to it. And it's like smoking. You go into almost convulsions on your first cigarette. And then down the road, your body and your brain adjust to it. And now your habit is there and you call it a comfort zone. The brain will do that. I want them to understand that while the brain's doing that, the other parts of your brain are saying, this is dumb, or this is going to hurt us, or this is wrong. That's where all the shame and the guilt and everything come through. I'm doing this. I know it's not good. I'm not changing it. I can change it. I'm not doing the work. Now we got guilt and shame. And then you keep repeating that behavior. It's like hitting yourself with a hammer every day. And it's just as easy to say, okay, little by little, I'm going to peel the layers off and start getting this thing. I have someone to help me. And that's the other key. Trying to do this alone. You talk about anxiety or even more depression. You're alone. You're hiding it from everyone. You're trying to put a mask on that you're okay. But meanwhile, you are in a state of aloneness. There's no one there, which is what a lot of times people came from. We talked about being abandoned or rejected. So you're doing it to yourself. Open it up to one or two people you trust. Don't be alone and work the program together with them. When you learn how, it's like riding a bike, you'll take off on your own.
I like you saying that because I've had clients have memories of being an infant in the crib. I'm like, that's far back memory. I mean, or a little child being in their bed, standing up in their crib, wanting someone to come and tend to them. And I feel like that's kind of what depression and anxiety can feel like. No one's coming. It's just me. And maybe I deserve this. Maybe it's just me. And this is my sentence in life. What do you say to folks that might feel like that?
There's a reinforcement paradigm that happens. This thing is taking control of my life years ago. I've tried all these little things to fix it. It didn't work. Every time it didn't work, it was reinforcing the notion that this is who I am. I'm not worthy. It's never going to change. I might as well just adjust to this and be miserable. And really, those things are just failed little attempts, but they give you a little piece of information, every one of those. When you string them together, it just means that you're going to begin to put a plan together that says, okay, I know I can't do all those things. What can I do? I'm stuck. I get help. And no longer am I going to feel that. When they leave my office, I get calls 2 days later. Something changed and I have no idea what it is. And then I say, that's because you got that little speck that said, okay, this is different. I think I can do this. It's a light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, and it's not a train. That's the piece that I want them to understand. You've had failures. It has reinforced your notion that you're never going anywhere, but that's because you did it on your own. When there's a fresh set of eyes who has an idea where it's going, you're in a whole different place.
I think you're saying also, like, you have an empathic witness now to kind of, now all the things that you have tried to kind of mask, just kind of get through, function, do your day-to-day life, and now you can go, okay, this is a safe place for me to come and tell the truth. This is it. This is what I'm really going through. This is maybe my trauma from my past. And now we're back into the processing, which I love your title of your first book, because I believe healing comes through processing. Do you believe in that? Do you find
Well,
that's
that's the
it?
core of what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I say, learn the process. It's sort of like, I use the analogy. Let's say you decided I'm going to go into a weightlifting training program and I want to build muscle. I'm not looking to get huge, but I want to really be defined in the whole thing. I said, if you go into that and say, I want to do this in a month, you're going to burn yourself out. You're going to maybe injure yourself and you're not getting the results you want. But if you just go in every day and plug into the process, this is the program I'm going to use today. There may be a different one tomorrow. I'm just going to plug in, stay consistent, because that's what change is. Learning is a function of change over time. We got to put the effort in. So I say, let's just do the program, enjoy the process, go in every day and say, I can't wait to get in there. I'm going to go do this. And then a year down the road, you're going to look at yourself and say, my goodness, this is a whole different me. It's the process. It's plugging into the process every day and not worrying about the results. The results will take care of themselves if you stay faithful to the process. As I say, I tell them, it's not brain surgery. This is basic, practical, logical information I'm giving you. If you do this, this happens.
It's interesting because when people say process, I've had people say, I don't know what that means. I don't even know what you're saying. So how would you define process for those that are like, okay, I hear what you're saying, but I'm not sure I'm totally understanding what you're saying?
Process for me is to be able to gather the information that you need. Secondly, to put together a plan. and then to stay in that plan every day and not worry about the destination. You can have a kind of a destination in your mind. I want to get healthy. I want to get off medication. I want to look like this, whatever it may be. That's fine. But every day, your mind is only fixated on what you're doing. That's your process every day. And just stay focused on that every day. If you're working with a therapist, you and that person are talking about what you're going to do. Stay focused on that. Don't get ahead of yourself. Don't quit. Don't make up reasons to not do it because, gee, I hate this, but this came up today and I couldn't do it. Then you're not getting the results. Stay close to the process. Incorporate everything else you're doing into that process. Don't change the process because of everything else you're doing.
Okay, let's talk about secondary gain for people that say maybe they're coming into therapy or maybe they're trying to do the work on their own, but they keep doing the same thing and they're gaining something from that. So they're getting a payoff from doing, they think they're getting a payoff because they can predict it. It's predictable. They know what they're getting. What do you say to people that kind of with the secondary gain, they're getting something from staying the same?
I call those therapeutic placebos. You tell a person, if you do this, you take this pill, you're going to get more energy, and they take the pill and it's a sugar pill and I got more energy because the ability to get more energy is already in there, but they didn't understand the process to get it. So what I do is I challenge them. I said, okay, you think you got it. Let's look at this. Let's tear it apart. I'm going to throw some scenarios at you. You tell me how you're going to use your process to solve them. And of course, after we're halfway into the first one, they're saying, huh? I said, okay, you did well on this first thing. Let's just give you this caveat. You did well and you taught yourself that if you stay with the program, good things are going to happen. Some good things happen, but the shelf life is very short on those right now. I just showed you that. So what we want to do is take that little thing that you develop and expand it so it covers all the various aspects of your life. That's how I go with them. I challenge. Just a loving, warm challenge.
I think that's so important when we aren't doing the thing that you can have some accountability because if we just keep doing the same thing, you're going to get the same result. And I think it's important that you have someone that can say, okay, let's explore the block here on what's going on that we just aren't making. You're not making these changes. You're not working the plan, so to speak, right? That we're kind of looking at those defenses and those protector parts that say, yeah, that's scary. I'm scared to make a change.
And that's where I want them to go. I talk about threshold. This is your ceiling, if you will. You came up here. And what I want you to do is be able to realize I can go higher. But what we're doing, we're back to that comfort zone thing. Get me to my comfort zone. Okay, good. I feel good. I said, but the comfort zone is what got you here. So now all you're asking me to do is introduce a new one and then you stop. What I want you to do is in your life, always challenge those comfort zones. Get yourself just a little uncomfortable. Then you know you're growing. And that's another process that we're talking about. As soon as you get comfortable and say, okay, I'm good. I got what I want. You're going to start to slip because then that's when you stop working. And what's holding you up, what is getting you to those points where you can feel better about yourself is the continuous process, the continuous commitment to what you're doing. If you get there and feel comfortable, you'll start slipping because you're going to stop working. I want them to understand that if you really want to love yourself, you want to be able to say, well, if that's how I feel, I should be thrilled about giving myself this kind of attention every day because I get better then.
How do you help someone increase their tolerance for discomfort? They're like, this is too much for me. I can't tolerate feeling uncomfortable or stepping out of my comfort zone.
That's where I get to that internal language. And I'm going to start saying, okay, where did this come from? I said, because this is not the way the human mind or body was set up. It's all about growth. It's all about evolution and development. How did yours get to the point that you want to stop it? Now we're going to go back, and almost always I uncover that person, that loving, wonderful person who was horrible to them growing up and said, you can't, you'll never get away from me. Or, hey, mom or dad, I did this. Yeah, right. Okay. But you could have done that. All those things that make doing something uncomfortable. So I just start tearing at that just a little bit. And I say, good, you do this stuff and I'll be the guy there that's going to say, yeah, great job. And you're going to see that you can do it. Let's challenge again. But the challenges are the micro steps. Now, they're the small things. At that point, people don't skip steps. You're gunning up the steps. They don't skip 2 or 3. They're barely getting to 1. So I just tell them, you got to pat yourself on the back for little incremental movements forward. And if you can do that, do the work, make the advance just a little bit, and then give yourself that pat on the back. Feel good and say, okay, got that. If I did that, I can go to the next little step. And I teach them how to work with those little steps, which really is what life is. It's not about big steps. It never is. Big steps, you always regress from a big step. Because moving forward means you get to a place where your mind has to adapt and learn to live there. And that doesn't happen with a leap. It happens with little steps, because living there is a process of getting there slowly. It's not a process of jumping there. It doesn't work. Like, the brain doesn't work that way.
And let's talk about someone that says, well, I can't because, whether it's maybe they are feeling like they're not motivated, or they've tried it and that doesn't work. I tried that and that doesn't work. So what do you say to folks that might feel like, well, I did that and that didn't work for me?
I am this person that goes 3 or 4 or 5 questions deep all the time. You tried that. Let's tear this apart and see what you did. Now, after about 2 questions into that, they break down, because it's not that they tried it. It's really about the language they use to tell themselves, I don't want to try it. Either it's too much work, or I'm going to uncover some demons I'm afraid of, or the comfort zone I don't want to leave, whatever it may be. So I say, good, if you did it, I just got to know how you failed on this, because you're asking me to help you. So let's look at that. It doesn't go deep. It's all about the fear of forward movement. It always is.
Yes. I find the fear of forward movement is so deep. I really do. And let's talk a little bit, and I know we're almost out of time, but I really want to hit one thing, is developmental stuckness. So if we didn't get a need met in childhood, and let's say we had a trauma happen at 4 years old, okay, a significant trauma. Maybe there was a car accident. Maybe it even was some neglect. A parent went back to work and you went into daycare and you didn't get your needs met. I mean, it could be a plethora of anything.
Mm-hmm.
So how much does that play into developmental, if we look at development, emotional development, into anxiety and depression?
I always think it's how significant that event was. The parent went back to work, but also what else is happening in their lives. That's the backdrop, if you will. So if it's nurturing and wonderful, and mom now has to go to work, and she was a stay-at-home person, and now she gets you up, and maybe someone else takes you to the school and picks you up, and she's not home when you first get there, and all those immediate needs aren't satisfied, that's one thing. But if it occurs in a loving, supportive environment, everyone makes up for that. But if it doesn't, then we go back, and then that becomes the reference point for moving forward. And that's the key phrase, terminology, the reference point. We all have them in our lives. We all have reference points where we go back and we draw from those. And I tell people, I'm very open with how I do things with people. These are the reference points. I need to help you go back and find all your reference points. Because every time something new comes up, what we try to do is we try to familiarize it. So we go back to a reference point and say, well, yeah, based on that, and that's where they'll say, I can't do this because based on that, I know I can't do it. Yeah, you can. We need to get to the reference point, see what happened there. Let's look at the whole picture, not just what happened, but the environment, what was happening with you physically, school, friends, siblings, the whole thing. Let's put it all together, see where your reference point is, and let's redo that a little bit. We're not going to change that point, but we're going to give you some different perspectives about how to look at that. And then that's going to widen. That's going to take that restricted reference point and open it up and make it much bigger so you have more ground to cover when you refer backward.
I love the idea of reference points, and maybe even I do timelines like of significant life events, and that helps kind of us when we're doing EMDR too. Eye movement desensitization reprocessing, which is a form of trauma treatment. It gives us those reference points, to your point. And I know my reference points and have works on my reference points. And that helps someone become so self-aware to say, oh, I can nurture that younger part of me that when my parents got divorced, that I can go back and nurture her. I can go back and take care of the needs maybe that she didn't get met. And that's so empowering. And I think I like the idea of calling them reference points.
Yeah. And the thing is, we take on reference points and we make them identity points. And then what happens is when we go back, we grab our identity from that. And I say, if we can unpack that reference point we also change your identity about it. And
Yes.
that's what I think you were talking about. You said we go nurture. We change the identity because we've unpacked that reference point. Is like you took a suitcase and grabbed everything going on in there and put it in the suitcase and then labeled it, got rejected. And that's all it is. So now you look at your suitcase, you don't open it because it's too painful, you think, to do that. And now you're stuck on that reference point. When we open it up, unpack it, and see what the whole thing is, then you can say, well, no wonder I responded that way. Or now I can see that that was happening and it wasn't all me. And this isn't who I am. That's all this stuff that happened. And I can go back and I can change that. The impact of that reference point has more positive energy and doesn't negate all the forward movement I can make.
That was a great way you just captured that. I love that. Opening the suitcase up, and it's no longer your identity. You're not stuck in, I'm defective because I was rejected or whatever that is. You can move through it and get to the other side of it. So what other material did we not cover that you feel like, or points, would be helpful to the audience? Is there anything we missed?
Kind of just to put it in a little capsule, I like to get people to understand the main message, which is you've got everything inside you already to become powerful, to be a person whose world you like, and then you learn to love. It's already in there. There's a lot of junk. We've been talking about a lot of junk piled on top of that. All we want to do is clear the junk off and get you to find out who's really inside there. And you're going to be surprised at how powerful that person is when you remove all the stuff, all these old reference points, and you start creating who you want to be. You're not going to find who you want to be. No one does that. We create who we want to be. We go back and get all these reference points, all these things like that, and we change them, and then we create. And we say, I want to be this. You have the power to do it. You just haven't learned how to access it. That's all.
Yes, it's all within you. That is such a truth that you can anchor into and use that as a centering point. Where can people find you? If they're like, I love this, I want to get the Fix It series, where can people find you?
Best places to find me is on my website, my name, www.faustruggiero.com. Everything about the books, me, everything is there. Media appearances, anything they want to know to learn more about me. And there's a contact link. If they want to send me a message, I do respond.
And we'll put everything in the show notes too. So it'll be right there at your fingertips. Thank you so much for your wisdom and your heart and the work you're doing in the world. Everybody go get the Fix It series. If you want practical tools, you get the information, get the facts, and get your practical tools that can help you with anxiety, depression, anger, and addictions coming out. So be sure to grab those as well. And thank you so much for being on the Close the Chapter podcast.
Kristen, it has been a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me. It was wonderful.
Thank you so much for listening to the Close the Chapter podcast. My hope is that you took home some actionable steps along with motivation, inspiration, and hope for making sustainable change in your life. If you enjoyed this episode, click the subscribe button to be sure to get the updated episodes every week and share with a friend or a family member. For more information about how to get connected, visit Kristen, Kristen, Boyce, Boice.com. Thanks and have a great day.